On an October morning in Scarborough, Canada, a man named Philip Grandine made a frantic 911 call. "My wife is unconscious, she's not breathing," he gasped into the phone, claiming he had just discovered his pregnant wife lying motionless in the bathtub. Initially, the call sounded like any routine emergency, but something in Philip's voice made the dispatcher feel uneasy. Why wasn't he performing CPR? Why did his voice sound too calm, almost indifferent, while his wife was supposedly dying? Nothing about the situation was as simple as it appeared, and what unfolded next would send chills down everyone's spine. When police and paramedics arrived at the scene, they found no clear signs of an attack or underlying medical condition. Anna simply lay there in the bathtub. She was gone. How could a healthy, pregnant woman suddenly die without any warning signs? From the beginning, everything seemed like a tragic accident. Philip, Anna's husband, had called for help immediately. However, just from one phone call, police quickly sensed something was off. Philip's reaction, his suspiciously calm demeanor, and the contradictory statements throughout the call made investigators unable to ignore their doubts. A husband who had just found his wife dead in the bathtub. Why wasn't he panicking? Why didn't he take the most instinctive actions like pulling his wife out of the water or attempting CPR when she had stopped breathing? Philip Grandine and Anna were a young married couple living in the peaceful neighborhood of Scarborough, Ontario, once considered the epitome of perfect love. Their love story began like a fairy tale, filled with dreams of a happy family, welcoming their first child, and building a life full of joy. Philip was a charismatic and talented man, known as a dedicated minister and thoughtful husband. Anna was a woman full of life and compassion. When they held their wedding, outsiders only saw a dream couple. Anna once spoke of Philip as her lifelong companion. They had sweet moments together, cozy evenings around the dinner table, romantic getaways, and gentle conversations about the future. Anyone looking at them would think they had everything. A complete family, perfect happiness. However, behind those radiant photos, the truth was completely different. Just 3 months after the wedding, a devastating truth was revealed. Anna discovered Philip had betrayed her with another woman. This wasn't a fleeting affair. The other woman was Anna's close friend, a member of the very church where Philip preached. This betrayal wasn't just emotional, but spiritual, leaving Anna devastated. Yet strangely, Anna didn't harbor hatred. She didn't completely cut ties with Philip. Instead, she chose the path of forgiveness. She desperately wanted to save this marriage, even hoping to help Philip find his way back to righteousness. But could someone like Philip, with all the dark secrets he was hiding, truly change? The marriage seemed to continue, but the cracks had begun to spread beyond concealment. Anna's tolerance wasn't met with any sincere remorse. Philip not only continued his affairs, but also became immersed in vices he carefully hid from his wife's eyes. Particularly his addiction to pornography, something completely contradictory to his lofty sermons from the pulpit, pushed Anna into exhaustion and utter despair. The tension escalated to its peak during marriage counseling sessions. Questions poured down like hail, and though Philip appeared repentant, claiming he wanted to return to morality, he was actually just hiding behind a perfect mask. By October 2011, when Anna's intuition told her that her husband was still maintaining his extramarital affair, she chose to confront him decisively. And from that moment, everything began to spiral into an endless abyss. The life Anna thought she had found completeness in, with peaceful evenings and bright dreams of the future, turned out to be just an illusion. Day by day, it was eroded by deep secrets, clever lies, and hidden actions no one knew about. Anna, in her innocence, had become a victim of the very life she believed had brought her safety and genuine love, but the harsh reality was that what she saw was just a thin veil covering a dangerous relationship. From an outsider's perspective, no one could imagine that the relationship between Philip and Anna harbored such fear and oppression. They were a young newlywed couple building their own home in Scarborough, a place where anyone would long to find peace and happiness. However, only those truly close could sense that behind the bright smiles and loving vows was a suffocating pressure that Philip was gradually tightening around Anna. Philip, The man everyone admired for his appearance as a devoted and caring husband was actually a terrifying tyrant. He wasn't simply a life partner, but a guard watching Anna's every breath. This relationship had transformed into an unequal battle, where love gave way to absolute domination, and Anna, instead of being herself, had become a soulless puppet in Philip's controlling hands. Among the most frightening behaviors Anna had to endure, Philip's interference in her social life was perhaps the most silent pain. He forbade her from meeting friends, from going out without his approval. Every time Anna dared to plan a date or an outing, Philip would become like a haunting ghost, constantly calling and texting, interrogating every detail about where she was, what she was doing, and with whom. If Anna was slow to respond, his rage would descend with threats, plunging her into overwhelming guilt and fear. But even more terrifying was how Philip had turned control into a refined art. From work to the most private hobbies, nothing escaped his watchful eye. He monitored her like a detective, ordering her to do this, forbidding her from doing that, even depriving her of activities she loved, all because he wanted her to belong completely to him, never to be away even for a moment. This was no longer love but cruel possession, where Anna completely lost her autonomy and the right to decide her own fate. But the phone calls and text messages were just the beginning of another series of frightening behaviors. Every time they traveled together, Philip turned his car into a dangerously psychological weapon. When tensions arose, he would accelerate frantically or suddenly slam the brakes, forcing Anna to grip her seat in terror. The car was no longer an ordinary means of transportation, but had become a tool of cruel punishment whenever Anna dared to act in ways that displeased him. However, Philip's tyrannical control went even deeper, straight into Anna's body and soul. Every time Anna tried to refuse Philip's sexual demands, he never accepted that refusal, but continued to force her with disgusting cruelty. Even though Anna was pregnant, even though she had just undergone painful surgeries and needed time to recover, Philip still callously demanded she comply with all his wishes, never caring about his wife's health or emotions. Anna's close friends later recounted that in private conversations, Anna had repeatedly confided that she felt like she had married an emotionless person, even a psychopath. To those around them, these complaints were just ordinary frustrations any wife might have in married life. But they failed to realize that those words were actually desperate cries for help, a warning sign no one noticed until it was too late. Philip's true behavior began to emerge frighteningly when Anna felt suffocated in the very house she called home. The relationship she once believed would bring love and protection had turned into an inescapable nightmare. Every time Anna wanted to step outside, even just to meet friends or simply go shopping, Philip would become a harsh prosecutor, questioning every detail, demanding she report meticulously on everything, including her expected return time. Day by day, Anna felt herself dissolving. She was no longer herself, but had become a ghost in a life that didn't belong to her. A life completely orchestrated by Philip, where every decision, every action was closely monitored and controlled by the very man she had once given her complete trust. The incident began with an emergency call on the morning of October 17, 2011, when Philip Grandine, appearing panicked, called 911 to report that his wife Anna had stopped breathing and was lying unconscious in the bathtub. He claimed to have discovered this condition after returning from a jog. However, his voice, though seeming worried, strangely lacked the grief emotions a normal husband should have. This immediately made investigators feel something was wrong. At the scene, investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies in Philip's statements. His cold attitude and lack of urgency in such a serious situation had police officers beginning to ask doubtful questions. Why didn't he try to save his wife? Why didn't he show any grief over the death of his pregnant wife? While Philip repeatedly insisted he couldn't lift his wife out of the bathtub because her body was too slippery, investigators began to dig deeper for evidence. They quickly discovered that many details in Philip's story didn't match reality. Most suspicious was that despite having medical training, Philip couldn't perform the most basic first aid, like CPR, a skill anyone in the medical field should master instinctively. Just hours after Anna was taken to the hospital, investigators conducted an autopsy, and confirmed the cause of death was drowning. However, Anna's death still contained mysteries that couldn't be explained by a simple accident. Though there were no obvious wounds on her body, some suspicious signs gradually emerged. Particularly noteworthy during medical analysis, doctors discovered traces of lorazepam in Anna's blood, a powerful sedative completely not recommended for pregnant women due to the potential for serious side effects. When police dug into Anna's phone data, a frightening discovery emerged. Just 3 days before her death, she had been hospitalized with unusual symptoms of fatigue and dizziness. In a call with her sister, Anna had confided that she felt unwell after drinking a smoothie prepared by Philip himself. Even more terrifying was Philip's attitude when Anna asked for an explanation about her unusual condition. Instead of showing concern like a loving husband, he completely refused to provide any useful information. This indifference and silence became an important clue, suggesting that Philip not only knew beforehand about the effects of what Anna had consumed, but may have been carefully preparing for this terrifying plan for a long time. When police questioned Philip about what type of medication Anna might have used, he continuously denied and showed suspiciously evasive behavior. However, when investigators analyzed the browsing history on Philip's computer, chilling truths began to be revealed. One of his most recent searches was a question about the dangerous dosage of lorazepam. The haunting question arose: why would a husband need to know this information, unless he had secretly been preparing a sinister plan targeting his wife's life? The deeper police went into the investigation, the more frightening details they discovered. Philip didn't just stop at searching for information about sedatives and how to use them. They also uncovered other strange and suspicious behaviors. On the morning of October 14, 2011, exactly when Anna was lying unconscious in the hospital, Philip had secretly searched for escort services. This happened before he called 911 and reported having discovered his wife lying motionless in the bathtub. This suspicious coincidence exposed Philip's true nature, a cold, calculating person completely lacking compassion, even in the moments when his wife was between life and death. All these clues converged on one haunting conclusion. Anna's death was not an unusual accident, but a premeditated murder orchestrated with sinister precision. Philip Grandine, despite bearing the title of loving husband and devout Catholic, had coldly planned and executed his wife's death with terrifying calculation. His motive couldn't be clearer: to escape a marriage that had become a burden and freely pursue life with his lover, the extramarital relationship he had secretly maintained. When the veil of deception was completely lifted, the truth about Philip emerged with all its cruelty. Investigators not only collected undeniable evidence of Anna's death, but also discovered that Philip's actions formed a chain of conspiracy carefully prepared long in advance, not an impulse or unexpected incident. And when all truth was exposed to light, the question was no longer whether Philip was a murderer. A much more frightening question had arisen. How could a human being so easily take the life of his pregnant wife? After all undeniable evidence was collected, the Philip Grandine case entered its decisive phase: the trial. The entire community turned their eyes to the courthouse, waiting for justice to be served and truth to be revealed. However, the journey to bring the killer to light proved more complex and arduous than anyone expected. After being arrested and facing murder charges, Philip stubbornly maintained his unbelievable argument: Anna's death was just a regrettable accident, that she had committed suicide or accidentally drowned. This defense was not only completely unconvincing, but also became a serious insult to those who loved Anna and her family. They couldn't accept that the death of a strong woman who always loved her family and cherished life could end with such a meaningless accident. In May 2012, Philip was officially arrested and faced murder charges. However, what outraged public opinion was that despite having sufficient evidence and reports from medical experts and investigators, he was granted the privilege of living at his parents' house under supervision instead of being detained in jail like other murderers. This unusual favoritism sparked strong waves of questioning about the fairness of the legal system. Could social status and connections buy leniency even when facing the most serious charges? Or was this just proof that justice could sometimes be distorted by factors beyond the truth? The official trial took place in 2014, nearly 3 years after Anna's death, when the wounds in the hearts of her loved ones were still unhealed. Despite having sufficient evidence to prove Philip had used sedatives to take his wife's life, he stubbornly denied all charges, insisting that Anna's death was unexpected and unintentional. The prosecution laid out before the court a chain of undeniable evidence. From Philip's search for information about lethal dosages of lorazepam before Anna died, to his suspicious actions when he hastily deleted data from his wife's phone and turned off the home security camera system right after she died. Each piece of evidence was like a puzzle piece in a meticulously planned crime. The forensic expert gave a clear conclusion. The dose of sedative in Anna's body exceeded safe levels, reaching potentially fatal amounts. This proved Philip had intentionally used the medication to render Anna unconscious and unable to resist. But the picture of Philip was even darker. Their relationship wasn't just destroyed by betrayal and continuous affairs, but also by the suffocating control and cold indifference he showed Anna. His maintenance of extramarital relationships and complete composure in the face of his wife's death not only exposed moral depravity, but also revealed the cruel nature of someone who only calculated for personal gain, even when it meant stepping over the body of his closest relative. When all clear evidence was presented in court, Anna's family felt a glimmer of hope in their hearts. They hoped for a severe sentence befitting someone who had cruelly taken the life of their most beloved. However, what happened next left them shocked and furious. The trial ended with a verdict many couldn't believe. Philip was only convicted of manslaughter and received a 15-year prison sentence, a punishment far too lenient for the horrific crime he had committed. The moment the verdict was read, Anna's family and the surrounding community were all stunned. They couldn't accept the leniency of the legal system, a system they had once trusted to bring true justice for Anna. While Philip could still look forward to freedom, still had a chance to continue living, Anna was gone forever, leaving wounds that would never heal in the hearts of those who loved her. But the fight for justice didn't end in the courtroom. Anna's family was determined not to give up and continued calling for fairness. They received strong support from the community, with protests demanding justice for Anna and condemning the overly lenient sentence for Philip. Their fight wasn't just for Anna, but for all other victims of domestic violence, those living in the shadows of deception and cruelty as Anna had experienced. Although the court's verdict had been issued, questions about justice for domestic violence victims remained open. Anna's family, with community support, persisted in their struggle. They wanted to send a strong message that domestic violence could never be tolerated, that criminals like Philip couldn't escape punishment, no matter how they disguised their true nature. And though the final verdict was announced in 2020 with a 15-year prison sentence, the wounds in Anna's family's hearts would never heal. The Philip Grandine case has closed, but the wounds in the hearts of those who loved Anna continue to bleed. Despite the court's final verdict, her family couldn't find peace in their souls. They not only lost a beloved relative, but also had to witness cleverly woven lies presented before the public. They had exhausted their strength fighting for justice, but perhaps what they longed for most was the truth and sincere apologies from the man Anna had once given her complete love. Philip received a 15-year prison sentence, yet many still felt this punishment was too lenient for what he had done. What's frightening is that Philip never showed genuine remorse, never admitted his actions were intentional murder. Even when asked to apologize to his wife's family, he stubbornly refused. This coldness cut deep into the hearts of Anna's loved ones. These are the unanswered questions Anna's family must carry for life. How could a husband be so heartless? How could a person deceive his wife, deceive his entire family, and even when his wife was dead, still not recognize his own guilt? These questions will forever haunt those who lost Anna, victim of greed, selfishness, and unforgivable actions by someone who had once sworn to love and protect her. With such a relatively light sentence, will Philip truly learn his lesson? Will he repeat these cruel behaviors with other women when freed? These questions don't just plague Anna's family, but worry the entire community. Though the verdict has been announced, the dark secrets in Philip's life, the horrific pain Anna had to endure, have still not been fully exposed. And Anna, The woman who should have enjoyed complete happiness, built a warm family, welcomed her first child, has gone forever before realizing those simple dreams. Her death wasn't a random tragedy, but the inevitable consequence of cruel manipulation, continuous deception, and Philip's stubborn refusal to admit guilt. What do you think about the sentence given to Philip? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for following along, and we'll see you in the next videos.